professor Roberto Ferreira. Estou aqui para colocar para vocês vídeo 22, Precious Plastic 3.
Welcome to a new Precious Plastic video. So in this video I'm going to show you how to make beams from plastic. And this technique is a good one if you really want to recycle plastic in bulk amounts, because a lot of plastic goes into one tube. Now we're going to use our extrusion machine with a little upgrade to make it, because this is a brand new technique. First we're going to make a mold, then I'll show you how to extrude the plastic, then I'll show you a little bit more techniques and options that you could also do, and finally how to upgrade the machine. But first we're going to make the mold, which is surprisingly easy. First thing is we're going to select our mold, which is just a basic metal tube. So you have a lot to choose from. You could make it round, square, flat, doesn't really matter that much. We're going to go this time for a thick square tube, and we're going to make it 3 meters long. Now we got our mold ready, and we're gonna use the extrusion machine to fill it up with some shredded plastic. So now we're extruding mixed colors of polypropylene, and it looked like red was the dominating one, so we're probably gonna have a red beam. But halfway I'm gonna change the color so you can see what it does and what kind of gradient it gives. But for now we just need to let the machine do its thing and wait until we have a beam. So once we take off the tube from the machine, we always cool it down in water, because there's a lot of pressure inside, so the plastic wants to float out. So once we cool it down, it gets solid, and we just need to wait until this one is cooled down. Now it's time to unbox. So here we have our freshly extruded beam. As you can see, from red slowly became white, as we planned. The beams themselves are quite flexible compared to wood or metal, but still pretty sturdy. And there are a lot of things you can do with these things, but also play with the colors and the texture you can give it. But I'll show more about that in the next chapter. Yeah, the world of beams is pretty interesting. Now you could just extrude a normal plain tube. However, if you put a little bit care and effort into this, you can get way more out of this technique. There are many things you can do with this beam technique. For instance, you can make them more round, like this one. And this is a big one, but you can also make them thinner, super smooth, or use a completely different shape and play around with colors as well. So here one is an even flatter one, which brings a whole new world of possibilities of what to make with it. And usually they come out with this little bit of a texture on it. They're not 100% smooth, but you can control this a little bit, like here, by adding a small wooden block inside your metal tube, which gives some friction. So the plastic wants to move forward, but is held back a little bit by this wooden block, which makes a way smoother surface. But sometimes it's also just nice to have this texture. It looks like a completely new material. And you could also use conventional tooling to make it super smooth, like sanding or cutting. You could even drill the material super nicely. But we don't recommend doing this much, because this brings a new kind of waste to it, like all these little particles that you drill away. You can recycle them again, but it's cool if it comes out of the tube exactly how you want it. And playing with colors is also an interesting one. So for instance, here we have a tube with a gradient of colors. So we started by adding some dark blue, lighter green, lighter green to yellow and red. But here you can see the material flows pretty smooth from one to the other, which opens up a whole new world of possibilities to play with colors and paint your tubes basically. And finally, you can also bend the material. So if you heat it up again, you could bend it into another shape you wanted to not have only straight tubes. So the material we mostly work with is polyethylene and polypropylene, because the material has quite some shrinking. So if it's in the tube and it cools down, it shrinks, so you can easily take it out. We also did some tests with polystyrene, which is nice. It's super hard, it almost doesn't bend, and you can really finish it. However, this material shrinks less, so it can be a bit more difficult to get it out of the tube. Alright, so these are a few things we've been playing around with. And we made some examples, like a ladder, or we've built this tower. But overall, there's still a lot more possible with this technique and a lot more to explore. But it's interesting because you can really construct and build with it and play a lot with colors and textures. Yeah, many things are possible when you start making beams, from a tower, but also smaller pieces or furniture. Now the beams are made using our extrusion machine, which you have seen in our videos on how to build your own extrusion machine. However, in order to make it work with this technique, it needs a little upgrade. So basically the main difference is that in the original one, we use this wood auger, which transports the material from one side to the other. It's heated up and molten, so it comes out liquid. However, this doesn't really build up any pressure, the material just flows out. But to extrude big beams, you need some compression. So we developed this extrusion screw, where the chambers are bigger here, the gaps, and here they are smaller, so the material flows from one side to the other, but it's slowly getting compressed, so it builds up a lot of pressure. You can download the technical drawings of this screw yourself, so you can make it, or go to our online bazaar to see if you can get one. Oh, and special thanks to our community member Simon for making the technical drawing. Now, you could just swap this extrusion screw for the original one, and you're done. However, like I said, this thing builds a lot of pressure, which also means more force on your machines. So you want to do a few other things. You definitely need to increase the strength of your machine as well. Mainly the barrel holder needs to be reinforced. I would suggest to get a more powerful motor and make sure that the table or the plate it's on doesn't bend. So we installed underneath some metal tubes to make sure it stays flat. The rest can pretty much stay the same. So once you reinforce your machine and you can put in the screw, you're ready to extrude. One thing we like to do as well is change the nozzle for the exact same one as we use in our injection machine, because the thread on the end makes it easy to swap on and off molds. So if you're extruding beams, you can swap from one to the other to make sure it's a little bit quicker, and you can set up a little production with that. Alright, so that was our video on how to make a beam. This is a pretty new technique and we barely touched the surface of all the possibilities. I mean, if you even start thinking about what to make with beams, from big construction items to smaller furniture, a lot is possible. If you have a question, feel free to post the topic in our forums. If you want to know more about how to upgrade the extrusion machine, go to our website where you can download all the information. And make sure to send us a picture of your extruded beam. Thanks for watching and see you again in the next video. Welcome to a new Precious Plastic video. So we show you many videos with techniques on how to make products, but one crucial part is also how to finish it, because sometimes they come out of the mold pretty rough, or sometimes stuff just doesn't go exactly the way how you want it. But there are some cool, good techniques that help you to get the most out of each product, and I'll show you how to finish them up using some stamps to mark each product to show which type of plastic it is. So overall the principle is the smoother your mold, the smoother the output. So for instance, here we have a CNC millet mold from aluminum that produces an iPhone case, and this one is super finished and super smooth. So also is the output product that you make is going to be super finished. You don't really have to do anything with this one. It comes out of the mold and it's done, which is nice. However, molds like that are also often very expensive and difficult to make. So if you weld your own mold, like this bowl, you need to make sure that the more you polish it and the cleaner you make it, the cleaner the output is going to be. So it always pays off to put some extra effort in your mold, because every product you're going to make with it comes out better, which means less work in the end to finish it up. Now, having super clean and polished molds also helps to prevent plastic from sticking to it, because the smoother it is, the less surface to stick. However, if you do occur this problem, you can get mold releases. They come in many different shapes and sizes. I would suggest to look locally what's available and test them out. But this could definitely help as well to prevent plastic from sticking to your mold. All right, so if you start to finish your plastic product, there are basically two different types. One are the hard ones, like polystyrene, PET, ABS, like this CD cover, and if you bend it, it breaks. Or you have the softer plastics, which are PP, HDPE, LDPE. They are more flexible and tend to bend if you squeeze them. So, for instance, here we have two exact same bowls. One is made from the flexible flower pots and one from the hard CD cases. And they look pretty similar when it comes to shape and size. However, if you hold them, you really feel a difference. And also sound-wise, this one feels way softer and this one has a much harder sound. The main difference when finishing these products is that the flexible one is softer and more difficult to really finish, polish and sand, and the hard one is really nice to sand it and polish it later. So for instance, as a few examples, we have three different blocks. This one is from ABS, which is hard. This one is from polystyrene, and this one is from polypropylene, which is soft. And they all had the exact same sanding and finishing technique. But as you can see, the polystyrene is super shiny and has this super clean edges. Same goes for the ABS. It really has this polishing finish to it. Whereas the polypropylene is way softer and way more matte. No matter how much you polish them, it just doesn't get as shiny. And it's also way softer, so if you put your nails in it, you instantly see the scratches. So if you make plastic products from the soft category, it really pays off to make a proper mold and that you have to finish as little as possible on it. But if you do need to make some edits to it, I would highly recommend to get a super basic knife. So let's say you have a bowl with a little bit of a rough edge around here. If you sand it, it doesn't really work because it's too soft, but with a little knife, you can really scrape the edges super clean and smooth again, because the knife creates some frictions which heats it up a little bit, and this makes it super smooth. And it's a super basic technique but very effective to really get rid of these rough edges. And another technique for surfaces is to use this little knife. It's basically the same thing, but if you have a surface like this one, which is a bit rougher and has some fibers here and there, you can really scrape it like this. And then it becomes really smooth, like you can see here. And one other technique you can use if your surface has this little foily plastic fibers is to use a heat gun. Now this works pretty good to get rid of it, but do watch out because it can also influence the rest of your surface and adds a little texture to it. But overall, the soft plastics, you would never get them as shiny as the hard ones. Alright, so finishing up the hard plastics. These one you can really just sand by hand or with a machine, starting up from grain 120 up to 1500. You just sand them step by step, and in the end you polish them. and they come super smooth and have this really polished, shiny surface, which also makes the colors pop way more. There are different materials to polish out there, and we use toothpaste, which works surprisingly good. However, this is white, and if you make something dark or with a color, you can have these little white dots in it. So we like it if you don't see the polishing paste. So you also have this transparent one, which are used in the car industry. They also give a nice shiny result. So for instance, here is one rock we made, and we really polished it, and now it's super shiny. It's made from CD cases. Or this big piece of ivory. So as you can see, it's really extruded very roughly on this side and slowly sanded and polished, and on this side it's super smooth. And that's something you wouldn't be able to achieve with the soft plastics. So it's a very labor-intense process. It's a very crafty way of working with plastic, but it does give some nice results. But as a production technique, I would say it's gonna take you a while to really make it this smooth every time. So once you made your object, whether it's hard or soft plastic, you need to mark it to show which type of plastic is. And this is important because if future generations wants to recycle it again, they can see which type of plastic it is, so they know how to treat it. There are several ways to stamp your plastic. You could hammer it in, you could use a Dremel tool to engrave it, or even a paper clip like these guys in the forums did. Now, we've been really cracking our head in finding a way how the entire precious plastic community can mark their products easily and affordable in a consistent method. And we found a pretty solid way. So we made our own little metal precious plastic coins. Each coin has a type of plastic on it. So for instance, here we have a polypropylene. You heat up these coins and then you mark and stamp it inside the plastic product. We like to use a soldering iron to heat it up. You just plug it in the electricity and put your coin on. Then you wait for about 7 minutes. It depends on which type of plastic, which melting temperature it is. But overall, it shouldn't take too long. So once the coin is hot enough, we're gonna take it off and we're gonna put it on our plastic product and press it in a little bit so all the plastic flows and melts. And then you just cool it down. If you're in a hurry, you could also put it in a bucket of water. We are aware the method of working with precious plastic is pretty labor intense. You need to collect, shred, melt and stamp your products. It's a lot of work, but that's what we do to recycle plastic. So we see this little logo not just as a type of plastic on there, but really as a precious plastic trademark, that it shows that you've taken all the steps to make this product, which makes it way more valuable. Now, we started with 5 different types of plastic, which are mostly used by the community, and you can buy these coins in our online bazaar. If you need more or different types, let us know. If a lot of people want them, we will make them as well. But for now, we're gonna start out with these 5. All right, so that was our video on how to finish your plastic products. I hope it was all clear and that it's useful for you and your plastic workspace to really increase the quality level of your products. Thanks again for watching. If you have a question, feel free to post the topic in our forums, and see you again in the next video. Welcome to a new Precious Plastic video. In this video, we're going to show you how to use a lot of plastic bags in bulk amounts and transform them into these marble-like objects, which are super strong and look super nice. And Sonia from Poland is going to show you how to do that.
Hi.
Hi.
I will show you how to prepare plastic bags, the whole making process, and then how to finish up the object. So let's start. First, you need to prepare plastic bags. We have 2 types of them. One are made from LDPE and others from HDPE, and you should always separate them from each other, but it's not always easy because some of them are not marked. But you can also always arrange the plastic bags as you want in terms of colors and mix them in a nice way to achieve these marble effects. The next step is to prepare plastic bags, and the easiest way is to shred them. But the good thing about this technique is that you can always cut it by hand. Okay, if you have already plastic bags, now we need to find a mold. Here we are using metal molds because they are very strong, but you can use whatever material or whatever shape you want. It's up to you. Just make sure that it's strong enough. You also need a pan to melt the plastic inside. So I will recommend you to just have this smooth ball so you can easily grab the plastic which is around. And always remember to put your mask on and have the gloves around. You will need also to set up an oven for 200 degrees. You should always be careful that your bags doesn't touch the heating elements in your oven, because that's the way you can put it on fire. While plastic bags melt, they create a dough, and step by step I am going to add more and more plastic bags to the dough. So finally I will have enough quantity to fulfill my mold. Once in a while you need to take your pan off of the oven and grab all these plastic bags which are aside. Try to make a nice dough. Add some more plastic bags and then back to the oven. Now I'm adding the bags I shredded. After the homemaking process, when we have our dough done, we are putting into the cold mold. This technique is easier because it cools down quicker, and it's also easier to take the object out from the mold. After putting the dough in the mold, now it's time for the compression process, and you can use the clamps to compress it, or you can use the compression in the oven. In our new version of the oven, we have compression machine below it. You should leave the mold into compression machine for some time and wait until it cool down. Then you can easily take it off and start finishing up the object. I always use the thicknesser planner because it's nice to get rid of the first layer, so then you can easily see all this nice line, and it's smoother and also cleaner. So first step for me it is always thicknesser planner. Then I am going to sand it and polish it. And now the cube is finished. After sanding and polishing, it looks a lot like marble. So now it's up to you. You can drill it, you can cut it. So you can make different shapes, different colors. It's up to your imagination.
Alright, so that was the video. Thank you, Sonja. I hope it was all clear. If it wasn't, feel free to post the topic in our forums. Thanks for watching and see you next time.
Bye.
Cheers. Welcome to a new Precious Plastic video. So in this video we're going to show you a new kind of way how to work with plastic. Usually plastic is all processed in machines and very big quantities, but this is more of a craftsman's way of working with plastic. To really do it by hand, sanding, with using very basic tools, just to make something very small and precious and delicate. And Marta from Spain is going to show you how that's being done.
Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to make a ring out of polystyrene. Once the mold is inside the oven, it should remain there for 20 minutes. Okay, so at this point of the process, this is what we should have. A polystyrene tile with a smooth borders ready to become a ring. And what we are going to do next is I'm going to show you how to choose the best spot on the tile for making the ring. Then we're going to drill a hole according to the size of our finger. And finally, we're going to shape the ring around it. Once we have the tile and before starting to shape the ring, it is very important to choose where to do it. So for example, if you want to make your ring more special or precious, it is nice to take a look to the tile, searching for areas that can make a ring look more precious because of transparencies or colorful spots, like this blue or this green one. And then once you have it, start to shape the ring there. So for instance, I'm going to continue doing it like here. At this stage of the process, we should have something like this. A basic and rough shape, which we will sand and polish until we get to something like this, our final ring. So sanding, it's one of the most important part of this whole process because, as I said before, it will determine the final quality of our product. Fortunately, PS, it's one of the few plastics that can be sanded and polished with really good results. In this case, we are going to use 4 different kind of paper, and we are going to go from a thicker one, 240, to a thinner one, 2000. We start with P280, sanding the edges of the piece and shaping the ring as we like. As this is the thickest of our papers, we will use it to perfection the shape of our ring. Sanding the exterior of the ring is very important, but getting a good quality on the interior is even more crucial as it needs to feel comfortable for the finger. We continue with P600, doing exactly the same. As we sand, we can already see how the surface quality improves. The third paper is P1000. The last sanding paper before swapping into polishing is P2000. After it, the surface will start feeling nice and shiny. There are a few ways of polishing plastic, and so far these are the ones we've tried. Toothpaste, car paint cleaner, and carb polish. Both toothpaste and paint cleaner work and leave a shiny surface. Problem is that we did a manual compression and that always leaves some holes on the surface, and these holes get filled with the liquid, which isn't transparent. That means these holes become white spots all over the surface. So at the end, what worked best for us is this weird car polish we found in the workspace, because it's transparent, which means we don't have white spots anymore, and it also leaves a really good and shiny surface at the end. And finally we have this ring, shiny and nice, but we don't have to forget about marking the type of plastic it is. So we are gonna do it with the Dremel, but you can also do it by hand. Okay, so now we already know how to do this ring, but you could also play a bit more with the shape and getting other kind of rings. For example, we have this one, quite simple, and you can go also for a more complex one if you want. Another option is swapping into other kinds of jewelry, as this bracelet, for example, transparent and nice, or this necklace, in which we really put an effort on getting it shiny, so you can really see it as a stone. Another possibility would be not only using the plastic on its own, but combining it with other materials like metal, or you can also do it with wood, whatever you want to. And at the end, you can also try different melting temperatures, so you can have little spots which look super rocky and nice. And well, that's what I did with two kinds of plastic, transparent and black. But imagine what you could do with more colors. I mean, the possibilities are amazing.
All right, nice. So yeah, that was it for this video. If you have any questions, feel free to post the topic in our forums and share us a picture of the things you made.
Yep.
We would like to see that. And see you again in the next video.
Bye.
Ciao. Welcome to a new Precious Plastic video. In this video, we're going to show you how to make a plastic bowl using a laser-cutted mold. So making molds like this means you can make them very accurate and easy to make another one, because you just laser all the parts again. We provide all the drawings for this in our download pack, and we have Matthijs from the Netherlands. He's going to show you how to do that.
Hello.
Hey.
First I will show you how to make a laser cut mold, then I will show you the molding process, and at last I will show you how to finish up the bowl. Let's get started.
Yeah.
So before making the mold, make sure that you separate all the parts so it's easy to recognize them, and then remove all the brims with the angle grinder so it's easier to connect them together. I started with welding the small bowl. I just took some plates and welded the points together. Always make sure to first weld all the corners together and then make the long lines. This prevents the parts of warping. After finishing the small bowl, I welded the big bowl. With the big bowl, I want to be sure that all the edges are really flush. So I use some tape and some matches to first hold it into place and then weld everything together. After welding the bowls, make sure to make the edges as smooth as possible. This will make it easier to release the ball from the mold. Especially the inner ball should be really smooth. So after grinding, I use sandpaper to sand it down first and then to polish it. Especially the inner part should be as smooth as possible so it's easy to take it out. This ball is a bit more difficult to sand, so I used some sandpaper and did it by hand. Before you finish the balls, you need to attach those spacers. First make sure that the spacers will fit and then weld them together. Now the balls are almost finished for using them. I use some paint first to make it recognizable which part is the inner and which one is the outer part, so I made them black. So it's easy to recognize and easy to stack them together. For the molding process, I use some mold release. This step is optional, you don't need it, but it can help with getting the ball out of the mold. So if you recognize your ball is sticking to the mold, you can use some mold release to make it easier to remove. The ball approximately weighs 300 grams. I use around 350 grams of plastic, so it's easy to recognize when everything is molten in the oven. You can see some material flow out and then you know it's time to get it out of the oven and clamp it together. Then if you fill it, make sure that it already will touch the sides. And then put the counterpart in. And make sure it's evenly spread. After fitting the ball, I put it into the oven. The oven was on 220 degrees preheated. After 30 minutes, I checked if the material was totally molten by compressing the mold. When I saw that the material was flowing out, I turned off the oven and let it cool down. To streamline your process, you can also compress outside of the oven. For that, we did an upgrade on the oven. This you can see at the upgrade page of the start section of the website. So this was the molding process. For finishing up the ball, I used a sharp knife. Polypropylene is not easy to sand because it's too soft. So I use a sharp knife to first remove the excess material, and then I scratch all the edges, which make them really smooth and nice. At last I added the polypropylene logo. This to make sure that you still know this ball is made of polypropylene, so it will be recyclable in the future. After mastering the technique of making this ball, you can play around with colors. Like mixing different colors together, making a proper green one, making a just plain white one. Or to play with different materials like polystyrene, really solid. Or this one also from polystyrene. This one is a nice polished finish and it's also translucent, as you can see.
All right, thank you. So that was the process on how to make your own mold using laser cutted parts and how to make a bowl. If you want to know more about how to finish a bowl, you can watch the video on our website. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to post the topic in our forums. So see you next time.
Bye.
Houdoe. Welcome to a new Precious Plastic video. In this video, we're gonna make a mold for the injection machine, cast it from aluminum, and we're gonna make these wall climbing grips. The interesting part of this technique is that it doesn't require any complex machinery to make it. It's pretty basic. It's all handmade, so it also gives a lot of freedom in terms of which form you want. Another upside is that it's relatively affordable to make something like this because it's a lot of basic tools and materials. The downside is that it still requires quite some effort and steps to really do this. You need to be kind of a skilled mold maker. So the process is still quite experimental, and this video, our friend from France, Joey, he's a mold maker and craftsman. He will be showing you how to make a mold casted from aluminum to use in the pressure plastic machine.
Hey!
Hey!
Yes, so for this tutorial we are going to make two molds. First one, the easier one, is only one part from aluminum and the other part from with a plate steel plates. Exactly. Oh, and the other one a bit more complex with two parts from aluminum and steel plate. So the first step we need to do is to model the shape we want with clay. Get it in plastic later. Which is important is to get a proper consistency because when the clay is too wet, it just gets super sticky on your fingers and it could be annoying. And when it's too dry, then you cannot properly model it. Use a board, so it's easier to turn around your object. You can use some tools like knife to model the clay, to cut around, to get a round shape like the grip. I prefer to work with my fingers. It's super playful and easy. So with clay it might be a bit sketchy like this. So to polish it, that you could do is just put your fingers into water, and this way you will manage to get a smooth surface, smooth texture, which is for sure better. So now we have our shape from clay. We are going to do a plaster mold around, and from this plaster mold we're gonna get the aluminum mold. It's gonna be exactly the same but stronger. Now it is time to make the plaster. So before it's getting too strong, you can already spread the first layer on your shape, and because it's liquid you will get all the details up. So our two molds are ready. Just check around, and thanks to the Vaseline we put, it just pop out. So here it is. Okay, so these are our plaster mold, so the simple one and the more complex one. And the next step will be to take the print of each piece with a special fondation to pour the aluminum inside. Okay, so now we have our plaster mold. Up a bit more dry, and the two-part mold up. Ooh. And what we want now is from this to get this. So same. For this purpose we are going to use some fondation. So when you press it, it's taking the print. So up. Put it right in the middle And once it's done, this is what you get. Also, and this is our print. Okay, this part is fixed. Alright, now we have our sand mold, and what we need is aluminum, so you can use any kind of aluminum, which is also super interesting process, like cans, piece of old machine, any kind of. And to melt it, we are going to use a rocket stove, pretty basic, and if you're interested about this technique, you can find many information on the internet, tutorials about how to build yours. So let's go. Here we are. These are our 3 sand mold, 1 mold for each plaster mold. So we are going to start the aluminum casting. To melt the aluminum, we are going to use a rocket stove. So our rocket stove is pretty basic and rough. Here we start on the fire. This is our bucket to melt the aluminum, and to increase the temperature we are using a basic air dryer, which is going to blow inside the fire through this tube. Here is the aluminum. And here is the charcoal, just basic barbecue charcoal. Let's go!
This is the fun part.
Okay, I'm going to open the mold and see what's inside. So it's the clue moment.
Go.
So this is what we were expecting to get.
Cool. Next.
Next. Oh, they are exactly like I was expecting for. Yeah, let's see. Let's wait. Everything is cooling down. Then we can just clean the border and drill the holes to connect the pieces together and start casting the plastic inside.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, so now our casting is still a bit rough, so we need to clean it and drill the holes, cut the steel plate and weld the connector. Okay, we have a mold, and yeah, it's quite a lot of work, but the more care you put in your mold, and the more detail it is, and the more detail you will get on your casting. So yeah, I think it's worth it. And now we are going to use the injection machine to cast this with recycled plastic. Aluminium mold is finished. I weld the injection cap, and here are the bolts around. And now we are going to cast it with the injection machine right here. We injected the plastic, now it's time to open the mold. Hey! Hey! So now we have hey! Now we have our casting ready. So yeah, with the injection machine you can really play around with the color, do as much as you want, and yeah, get really the shape you want, which is nice. So I hope this tutorial was clear, and if you have questions you can just ask on the forum.
That was my sentence.
Shit, I thought, okay.
Yeah, so if you have any questions, feel free to post the topic in our forums. And if you need more information, go to preciousplastic.com. And that's it for this video. Hope to see you again in the next one.
Yeah.
Welcome to a new Precious Plastic video. In today's video we're gonna make a basic mold using welding technique. It's an affordable and accessible way to make your molds. And overall, the more accurate you make your mold, the more accurate your output. So it's good to take your time and do it carefully. And for today's video we got our friend Taco from Mexico to help us out. Hi.
Today we're going to make this tile. So first we need to make a mold by cutting the parts together and welding them. Using a center punch, which is harder than our plate, we will draw a circumference of 7 centimeters and then divide it in 6 equal parts. Now that the hexagon is complete, we will cut it. Now we cut the walls. Now that we have all the parts, we will prepare them to be welded. After sanding the parts, we are going to weld them, but we really want the welding to penetrate, so we are going to remove this material in order to allow the welding to join and fuse to the parts. So this is what we want. Now we are going to fuse it together. So we have cut all the parts and we are going to weld them together into a mold. This is how it looks welded, and this is grinded. Once the holes are made in the wall, we will make them also in the cap. So just like this, once the bolts are in place, we are going to weld everything together. The cap fits perfectly now, so all we need is a fitting here. We will turn this cap into a nozzle by cutting this piece and making a hole through it, just like this. Scratches. So this flat sheet will bend once the hot plastic is injected, and you don't want that. So what you want is welding these pieces here so it has more back support, like a nice back support. Yes. And that's it. So before we inject the plastic, we need to clean it up a bit. Maybe sanding, maybe just scratching the excess of welding. While sanding, always remember to smooth the edges so you avoid future accidents. So now the mold is ready, it's time to inject some plastic. Now the mold is solid and ready, and we are going to use the injection machine to make a tile. You're recording, right? First we're going to turn on the machine, make sure the cap is in the bottom so it doesn't leak. So we wait 20 minutes until it's molten enough to replace the cap with the mold, and then we inject it. So alright, the mold is now injected with molten plastic. We will turn the machine off. After cooling it down, we are going to open it up and finish out the piece. It's kind of an easy step, but if you do it properly and with care, it will make you a piece better. Now the piece is ready because now it's cold and ready to be removed from the inside of the mold. We are gonna take it apart and pull the piece out. So the piece is almost perfect. What needs to be done is we need to take a basic knife to remove the excess of. So now that our piece is finished, we need to stamp it with the right material, which is polypropylene. Check the video on how to detail it to make it look very nice, and also how to mark it with our stamps. So now I'm gonna stamp and the product is ready. So this is how hexagonal tiles look like. So that was a video about how to make a welded mold. This time we did a very basic tile, but as you can imagine,
Many more is possible with this
technique.
So that was it for this video. If you have a question, feel free to post the topic in our forums, and make sure to send us a picture of the welded mold you made, or even upload your own video. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.
Bye.
Adios. We are Precious Plastic, and we don't like waste. So we made an entire plastic recycling workspace inside an old shipping container. It contains all the tools and machines to turn plastic waste into valuable things. Plastic is collected, shredded and turned into something new, all inside the space. This workspace can turn plastic trash into, let's say, beautiful bowls in any color, or strong wall grips. And with precise molds, it can make precise objects, or simply make any wall more beautiful. make beams and construct a big tower, or start small with a jewelry collection. This workspace can be set up all over the world, from cities to tropical beaches to the middle of a landfill. Plastic trash goes in, valuable items out. We share step-by-step instruction videos and all the technical drawings to build this workspace yourself. Open source, online, for free. Plus tutorials on how to make objects, a big community of helpers, plus an online marketplace to buy and sell products. So people from all over the world, like you, can set up a little recycle business, turning plastic waste into valuable things. Now you can set up a workspace like this yourself anywhere in the world and start recycling plastic. However, we're also aware it can be a bit overwhelming to set up something like this yourself. So we created a map where people can collaborate and find each other. Let others know you're ready to take action, whether it's promoting, funding, collecting, building, helping, selling. At all fronts, help is needed. Add yourself to our map, find each other and start. Oh, and make sure to spread this message around. It might not be you that wants to get started, but it could be your friend, family, neighbor. So let's make sure they know they can. Visit preciousplastic.com for all the information. Welcome to a new Precious Plastic video. In this video series, we're going to show you how to set up a Precious Plastic workspace. Because recycling plastic is not just about building our machines, but you also need a space where you can sort out your plastic, where you can shred it, where you can separate it. So we'll show you how to do that in this video. And we're going to build this workspace inside a shipping container, like this one. You can easily find them everywhere in the world and you can move them around, which can come in handy. But also the size fits perfectly for what we need to set up a full equipped workspace. So we're going to turn this shipping container into a workspace like this. You can also download the template to make this miniature version of the workspace. It can come in handy if you are making a plan or scale model of your garden or place where you're going to install it. And it's just fun. So this is going to be quite some work. So if you already have a place yourself, I would suggest to use that. But you can still use this video as a reference to see the things you need to set up this workspace and what are the best measurements and the way how to organize it inside. You can find all the technical drawings and blueprints online in our download pack. And if you have a question, feel free to post the topic in our forums. And now we're gonna get started. Alright, so this is what we're gonna do in this video. And the first step is to get a container. So we're currently at the harbor in Rotterdam. It's in the Netherlands where all the containers come in. And they have a lot of them here around. We're looking for one to buy and it's super easy. I mean, they have so many of them around here. You have different sizes to get, so at least you have different colors. But you also have super long ones like these ones. And this one is already a smaller one. We're going for the long one. Just because everything fits in nicely and we have plenty of space to work. Anyway, we're gonna pick a nice one now. The main thing to watch out for is just make sure it's watertight and not rusted, because they're all second-hand and been used for a few years. Besides that, they're all pretty much the same. It's amazing. Alright, so we're gonna look out for one and transport it to our workspace. So the container arrived, and one thing to make sure you do before you park it is that you have enough space. So for instance here we don't really have that much space, but on the other side we do, because we want to make sure we want to open up one side of the container, so we need enough space to adjust and to work around with it. Before you put the container on the ground, you can add some normal floor tiles underneath to put the container on top. So in this way it floats a little bit, which makes it easier to paint later on. You want to make sure that your container is waterproof, so there are no little rusty holes in there. And a good way to check it out is to just close it. And if you have light shining through, you can see the holes. Looks pretty good. So as you can see, the container itself is not super strong. You can move around like this. It's because all the strength comes from the edges of the container. So the walls don't provide any support, which is kind of nice because that means you can also fully take them out if you want. Just make sure that you don't touch the edges, because then it's not certified anymore. And you kind of want that if you want to ship it around. Alright, so we got ourselves a container and it's properly parked outside. So now we're going to do the first step, which is cutting out 2 big holes. So the first thing we're going to do is open up the walls so we have some light and ventilation inside the container. However, this stuff is pretty heavy, all this metal and these big surfaces, so it's probably a 2-man job. So I got my boy Jerry here. Yo! So together we're gonna get started. So let's get started. Yes. So if you take out the wall, it's best to cut it as low as possible to the beams, because otherwise you end up with this edge which you need to cut off now manually. So we cut out the window, but we left it closed on a few places, mainly because otherwise when you're grinding halfway in it already falls. So in this way you can cut 90% and then just do the last 10% and it just pops out. The holes are in the container and we finished up the edges so we can weld on top of it. And that's also our next step, to reinforce these holes to make sure they're strong and use these leftover sheets to make the windows that open and close. Alright, so we cut out 2 big holes in the container. Now we're gonna reinforce them with some beams to make sure it's still strong. And we're gonna put a door in the big one. We use some woods in between here and also on the bottom. That is to make sure we still have some space later so it can hinge open and close. And here is like a little hole, which is in that one as well. So we're gonna put in a metal rod and then we're gonna weld it together in there. Oh yeah! Alright, so we finished the big door. This was the tough one. And now we're gonna make the window frame for this smaller window where people are gonna bring their plastic. So the frame is in, make sure to put it on a few beams or anything that gives a little bit of height, because we need this, because later we're gonna add a little counter on there. So we finished the window in front of our container and also the big one here in the back. And we added some of these gas springs, which you can find in the back of a car as well, when they open up. And it saves a lot of weight when you need to lift this whole thing up. And if you cannot find a gas spring, you could also make a door that just opens sideways. But we like when the cover is like this, because like now, if it rains, you have a nice dry spot. Anyway, that's it for the video about the outside of the container. In the next one, we're gonna focus more on the inside, the machines, the displays, and how to set that everything up. So, hope to see you in the next video. Alright, so we finished the first step of this video series. I hope it was all clear. If you have a question, feel free to post the topic in our forums. You can download all the blueprints and technical drawings on our website. And in the next step, we're going to build the entire interior for the workspace. So see you in the next video.
Estou sempre à disposição nos meus e-mails para tirar qualquer dúvida que possa ter ficado. Não se furtem de me consultar. Um abraço a todos.